All right, good morning, good Erev Yom Kippur. Today we're learning Maseches Kiddushin Daf Mem Beis, and we're starting about 8 or 9 lines from the bottom of Mem Aleph Amud Beis. Yesterday we were discussing the dinim of Shlichus. We had discussed the Mar Makomos that we know Shlichus works by Kiddushin and by Gerushin, that we learned from a Hekesh. We discussed also the Psukim by Truma, which was Gam Atem L'Rabos Es HaShliach. We discussed by Kodshim that Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha taught us that Shlucho Shel Adam Kamoso, and we learned it from a pasuk of Beshachatu, a so-called Kahal Das Yisrael. So we're going to go through a couple of these things, but the first of them is to question something that we learned. We had learned that in theory, we could learn Truma, the one din of Truma. We said we are able to learn out Truma. Remember we said, Teisi Chad Mehanach Trey. We could learn 1 from 2. We were successfully able to learn Truma from the worlds of Kodshim and the worlds of Kiddushin / Gerushin. So that does work. And then we said, what does Gamatem mean? Gamatem is to remind us that a goy can't do Truma for us. And 10 lines from the bottom, the Gemara picks up and says, wait, Ula Reb Shimon depata, Reb Shimon, who has a different din in regards to Avodim, Ditnan. What does the Mishnah say? The Tanakama in this Mishnah holds, Trumas Oved Kochavim Midamas V'chayav Aleh Chomesh, by a goy is chayav and chomesh. Reb Shimon poter, Reb Shimon paters and says, no, the dinim of an akum by truma are not like a yid. So therefore, what you thought was a good limud yesterday as to why we needed gamatem, we're back to square one. I understand you can learn truma, that shlichus applies by truma from the worlds of kodshim and from the world of kiddushin and gerushin. I got it. But what does gamatem mean? So atem, gamatem, lamali. Why then do we need that drasha? So the Gemara says, don't worry. Even according to Reb Shimon, who's poter, we still need the words gamatem. Itzrich salka daita chamina hol v'amar mar, because we have a brisa elsewhere that says atem, that velo arisim, that you can have people do truma for you, but not sharecroppers. Atem velo shutva, not your partners. You have to do it. Atem velo apotropos. Atem velo hatorim es she'eno shelo. You can't give truma for something that's not yours. Ema, I might have thought that atem velo shluchachem nami. I might have thought that you can't even have a shliach. Kamash Molan says the Gemara that we do. Fine. So we answered up that quick little question about Reb Shimon. And now the Gemara is going to go back and ask a kasha on our Mari Mekomos by Kodshim Kalim. We had said yesterday that we know Shlichus works by Kodshim Kalim. Remember the case? We said that they lost their sheep. They sent out this guy to go get a sheep. And then, fine, the whole discussion, we said Shlichus works, and it was based on the pasuk of B'shachatu, so-called Kahal Das Yisrael Ben Harbaim. So the Gemara says 4 lines from the bottom, Hanicha. I understand that you have a Mari Makom for Shlichus for Kodshim Kalim from the pasuk that we saw above in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha. That makes sense. Elo the Rabbi Yonasan, who takes that pasuk of a shachatu and learns it for something else, the mapik lei l'hai kora l'drasha achrina minala. According to Rabbi Yonasan, the Gemara says, according to Rabbi Yonasan, we can't use the pasuk of a shachatu also because that pasuk is being used for something else. What is that pasuk being used for? Huge chiddush. Unbelievable chiddush. Tanya, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yonasan, or possibly Reb Nasan, Omer, he says, Minayin shekol Yisrael kulan, every Jew on the planet, Yotzim, turning to the top of Mem Beis, Merav Yotzim Pesach Echad, which is amazing because as Rashi highlights on the top of the page, a sheep is one sheep. You can't feed millions of people with that. It's like crazy. The hakrava is the ikr. You're eating. It's like kiddush on Friday night. The chiyuv is to say kiddush. You don't have to drink, but zachrei al yayin is a din derabanan. But kiddush is a din deraisa. Here too, by the korban pesach, I don't need you to eat a kizayis. It's impossible. 1 million people. There aren't 1 million kizaysim in a sheep. Yet everybody works because, as Rashi says, el zrikas dam l'chuda. So how do we know that I could bring 1 korban pesach and it can serve as the korban pesach for all of Klal Yisrael? Shene'emar b'shachatu so-called kahal das Yisrael bein arbaim. So the Gemara has a drasha on this. V'chi kol hakal kulam shochten. Pasha, that's not what's happening. One guy is shochet. V'halo eino shochet ala echad. Ela mikan shekol Yisrael yotzim b'pesach echad. So says the Gemara that according to Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha, he learned this pasuk differently. He learned this pasuk to teach us about shlichus. But according to Rabbi Yonasan or Rabbi Nasan, who learns this pasuk that you can be yotze with one person's korban for a korban pesach, if that's true, then shliach b'kodshim minale. That according to Rabbi Yonasan, Rabbi Nasan, who then, where I should say, is the Mari Makom that we have shlichus by kodshim, because now this pasuk is being repurposed. So the Gemara says a one-word answer. Minei, go look at the pasuk. What was the drasha? The drasha was v'halo eino shochet ela echad. Elamai, it must be that shlichus also can be learned from here. Says the Gemara, no, not necessarily. No, the Dilma Shiny Hasam, the Isle Shutvis Bigavayu. Perhaps in that case, maybe the Pasuk in Chumash was talking about a Shutvis where you and I together own the sheep, whatever the case may be, and therefore you can't bring a raya that Shlichus works from here. Ella, perhaps that Rav Yona's son would learn that there's Shlichus by Kachim Mehachav Yichulahem Ish Selaves Avos Selabais. Perhaps we could say that we learn it out from a different pasuk where it says that you should take ish, a man should take selabes avos selabais. Ish is singular, that one man can bring on behalf of a household. So maybe that's shlichus by kodshim. Says more, not necessarily. Perhaps that's also a partnership and not a classical case of shlichus, so therefore no raya. Says the Gemara, okay, but then if that's true, then we have two cases teaching us about shutvis. We have the case about that we started at the top of this page about shachatu, a so-called kaladas Yisrael ben Arbaim, and we have this new pasuk vayikhu lahem ish selabes avos selabais. You're saying both of them are b'shutvas v'gavayu. In Cain, 8 lines down, trei kroi lamali. Why do I then need two psukim? Why do I need two psukim teaching me the same thing about shutvis? I don't. So therefore, if we can't use the second pasuk of ish, if we can't use it for this purposes, then give it to something else which isn't talking about shutvis. And what would that be? That would be shlichus. And problem solved. Says the Gemara, no, because that pasuk is miboyle lichad Rabbi Yitzchak. The pasuk of yichus lohem ish selabes avos selabais, it's actually used for something else. Dam Rabbi Yitzchak ish zoche velo hakotan zoche. It's to teach us that the language of ish teaches us that the Korban Pesach only works for an adult and not for a child. Says Gemara, no. Hahu, that fact that a katan is not zoche in the Korban Pesach is not from vayikolahem ish selabes selabais, but rather from the pasuk of ahum ish lefi achlo nafka. And V'akati says the Gemara miboyle de shochten es haPesach al yachid. Perhaps we can say that our pasuk of vayikolahem ish selabes selabais is used to teach us that a Korban Pesach can be brought even for one single individual. Says the Gemara, no. Savar La, the author that we are discussing over here, Rabbi Yonasan, is of the opinion that that's not allowed. Savar La, Kemand Amar Ein Shochten Es HaPesach Ala Yachid. Now, this is a lot of back and forth in the Shak Levitaria, but the Sikum Hadvarim is that Rabbi Yonasan at the bottom of the page, who uses the pasuk that Rav Yoshua ben Korcha used yesterday for Shlichus, so that pasuk is being repurposed. Fine, says the Gemara, don't worry. We are still able to have a Mari Makom that according to Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha, the source that we allow for Shlichus and Kachim was this pasuk we learned yesterday, V'shachatu, also as called Kahaladas Yisrael ben Arbaim. And according to Rav Yonasan, the pasuk that teaches us we have Shlichus by Kachim is this pasuk at the top of this page, which is V'yichulhem ish selabes avos selabais. The Gemara now says a third of the way down on Membeis Mud Aleph. Well, wait 1 second. We have a little bit of a difficulty with one of the shitas of Rav, because says the Gemara, Amar Rav Gidol Amar Rav, Minayin sheshlucho shel Adam kamoso. How do we know that shlucho shel Adam is kamoso, which we learned yesterday? That if I'm a Moel and I'm working on behalf of you, that you can fulfill your obligations through me. So the pasuk says, Shenemar v'nasi echad mimateh. These are the psukim that discuss the handing out, the apportioning of Eretz Yisrael. So there, everybody got their piece. It says the Gemara, Tepuk lei shlichus mehacha. Why did Rav learn out shlucho shel Adam kamoso from the apportioning of Eretz Yisrael? You could have learned it from all the psukim that we've been learning the last 2 days, which is the psukim by Gittin and Kiddushin. You could have learned shlucho shel Adam kamoso from the world of Truma. You could have learned it from either source, either Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha's source or Rabbi Yonasan's source in regards to the world of Kachim. Why are you starting with a whole new pasuk, Rav? We have all the information that we need. So the Gemara says, "V'tizbara hashlichusu." You really think that what Rav was learning out from the pasuk of Nasi Echad and Nasi Echad Mimateh was talking about shlichus? You're wrong. That's not what Rav was doing with that pasuk. Rather, I should say not rather, but that can't be that the pasuk of Nasi Echad Mimateh is talking about shlichus, because children are included in the apportioning of Eretz Yisrael. And if that's true, children are not b'nei shlichus. Elamai, it must be elaki had Rava bar Avhuna, Amar Rava bar Avhuna, Rava bar Avhuna, Amar Rav, Gidol Amar Rav, Minayin shezach and Adam shlo b'fanav. Oh, Rav wasn't talking about shlichus with the pasuk of Nasi Echad Mimateh. He was talking about zachin la'adam shlo b'fanav shenamar v'nasi echad nasi echad. Beautiful. So now the question on Rav fell away. We wanted to say, Rav, why are you learning out Shlucho Shel Adam Kamoso from the world of apportioning Eretz Yisrael? You have all the Marim Komos from Daf Mem and Daf Mem Aleph. We have plenty plenty of room for you to learn what you need to learn about Shluchos Shalom Kamoso. Why are you learning it from somewhere else? Says the Gemara, we're not. That's not what those psukim are for. Perhaps those psukim are for Zachan Ladam Shelo B'fano. Says the Gemara, V'tizbara Zchusi. Is it absolutely considered a schus to get Eretz Yisrael? It is, but what's the problem? V'hachova nami ika. There are times that it's to someone's detriment. The cranky people. What's going to happen? This guy wanted to have the mountainside. He didn't want to have the valley. And so in the apportioning of Eretz Yisrael, not everything is roses. It should be. That's how we should have felt about it. If you got the bika and you wanted the har, get over it. Everything is good still Eretz Yisrael. The Maisa, the Gemara says that that's considered a chov. So therefore, you can't say that the pasuk by apportioning the land to the tribes was all zachin l'adam shelo b'fanav, because some of it wasn't good. The Ella Kiddushin bar Rav Huna. It must be that we have to understand the pasuk of v'nasi echad mimateh, that that's learning something else. Amar Rava bar Rav Huna Amar Rav Gidol Amar Rav minayin liyasomim shabo lachlok b'nichsei avi and shebezin ma'amidim l'apotropos l'chov v'lischos. How do we know, says the Gemara, that when we are apportioning land for Yisomim, that a bezdin can give an apotropos l'chov v'lischos, that a bezdin can give all of the properties, all of the father to the children, and sometimes it's lechov, and sometimes it's l'schos, sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's bad. Gemara says, what do you mean sometimes it's bad? Lechov, an apotropos is allowed to make a bad decision for the people who he's representing. What kind of lawyer are you? That's terrible. Says Gemara, lechov amai. He says, no, it doesn't mean that we can make bad decisions. It's ela lechov almanas lischos. I made a tough decision for your good. It's, the parenting thing that we say, like, no, it's for your benefit, So the Gemara says that perhaps that's what an apotropos means over here. Either way, how do we know that an apotropos can be appointed by Bezdin? Talmud Lomar v'nasi echad mimate tikachu. So the problem is now solved. We were concerned about Rav. Rav, supposedly, someone quoted Rav as saying, hey, Shluchos Ladam Kamoso. Where does that come from? It comes from the Psukim v'nasi echad mimate. Says the Gemara, why would you do that? We have so many Mari Makomos here to learn from. Why would you start from a new sugya? Says the Gemara, you're right. It's a mistake. We didn't learn that from there at all. What we learned from the pasuk of v'nasi echad mimate, with that we learned about the fact that Bezdin is ma'amid on apotropos to take care of children. Questioned and answered. And the Gemara says 10, 12 lines from the bottom of the two dots, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel, Yisomim shabo lachlok b'nichsei avin, picking up on the last limud of the Gemara, that Gemara say that Yisomim who want to divvy up their father's properties, that Bezin Mamid and Lapotropos, that Bezin can create some kind of decision-making person, a court-appointed person to divvy up the property, and he'll choose for them how to divvy up their properties. The Migdilu, and here's where we're going to see a machlokas. What happens when those kids become Gedolim? Let's say that Rahman al-Lisan, kids who are young, have to divvy up their father's properties. So the Gemara says that an apotropos can do it. What happens when they become older? We know by Gerus we have this idea, right? If the Katan Shei's got, when he becomes 13, he can throw everything down. He can just get rid of it all. So over here, the Gemara says, the apotropos was appointed when the kid was 6, 7 years old, and he got the property by the water, and he didn't get the property in the city. So maybe Yechol Limchos when he gets older. Says the Gemara, that is one shita. That's Shmuel shita. But Rav Nachman himself, he argues, and Omar im higdilu einam Yecholim Limchos. The reason why children are not allowed to be mocha, they can't complain after the apportioning of their father's properties when they were kids. Why not? Dim kain ma koach bezdin yofet. The takana that we had that the chachamim can appoint an apotropos, that the bezdin can appoint an apotropos, was a limud from a pasuk in Chumash. So if you're saying that the child can now go back after he's 13 and say to the apotropos, you did a bad job, I want everything to go back to her, then what was the point of the din of bezdin? So Rav Nachman seems to be saying you can't undo what the apotropos did when you were a child. You can't undo that, because otherwise you're undermining bezdin. So says the Gemara, does Rav Nachman really hold that way? Umi isle the Rav Nachman, the argument of Imkain ma koach bezdin yafeh, 4 lines from the bottom. Does Rav Nachman really have such a concern to the point that a katan cannot complain about what he got? That's not. We'll see now from this Mishnah, and then from, of course, Rav Nachman's and Amora. So we're going to read a Mishnah, and then Rav Nachman's opinion on the Mishnah, and then we'll see that Rav Nachman seemingly associates himself. Shum ha-dayanim, the estimations of dayanim, shepichsu shesus o hosiru shesus, machran bata. We know that there's a din, that if you and I are in sales together, and I have a margin of error above or below market value of 1/6 or greater, or we should actually see greater than 1/6, the sales batel. That's what. So, but if a bezdin's involved, shum hadayanim, if bezdin's involved, and their estimation was shepichsu shasus, they were lower than 1/6 below market value. Oh, siru shasus machran batal doesn't count. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel omer machran kayam. Why did Rav Shimon ben Gamliel hold that Bezdin's assessments, even if they're out of the 1/6 range of error, why did he say that they still count? Skip the parentheses, because im kain makoach Bezdin yafeh. And v'amar Rav Huna bar Chinana, amar Rav Nachman, what does Rav Nachman hold? Halacha kedibri chachamim, like the Tanakama. The Tanakama did not hold of the concern of im kain makoach Bezdin yafeh. So in our case, where we started 5-6 lines ago, Rav Nachman was of the opinion that of im kain koach Bezdin yafeh. But in the Mishnah on the bottom of the page, he sides like the Chachamim who don't hold of im kain makoach Bezdin yafeh. Says the Gemara, lo kasha, no problem at all. Turning to the top of Membeis, there isn't a stira between the two shitas of Rav Nachman. Sometimes Rav Nachman's of the opinion that we do hold of makoach Bezdin yafeh, and sometimes not. In one case, when there's a big mistake, so then we may want to follow Bezdin. But hadiloto, where there wasn't a mistake, we don't say koach Bezdin yafeh. Asks the Gemara, idiloto, ma yichol limchos. What do you mean? If there wasn't a mistake, what are the kids coming to complain about? So they're saying there wasn't a mistake, but I don't want property X. I'd rather have property Y. And as the Gemara says, I wanted the property to the south. That's what Rashi says. Property to the south versus property to the north. You gave me a property that's shaveh. It's financially, fiscally what I deserve as a child, but it's not the property I wanted. So I can push back and say otherwise. Mem Beis Mid Beis, second line, Amar of Nachman, similar sugya. Ha'achem shechilku. You have brothers who are dividing properties. Harehen kilakuchos. They are like people who are involved in regular transactions as it relates to the margin of error of 1/6. Again, we as Yidden are obligated. When we do transactions with one another, we're not allowed to price gouge. We have to stay within 1/6 of the market value. So therefore, says the Gemara, and we're going to analyze this statement of Rav Nachman. So let's just lock in for a minute here, because when we understand these 3-4 lines, we'll understand the next 15 lines. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman, Achim shechilko aren kilakuchos. They are like buyers. Pachos mishasus nikne mekach. If the margin of error is less than 1/6, then good to go. Nikne mekach, the purchase counts. Yeser al shasus. If the margin of error is greater than 1/6, batel mekach, 0, nothing doing. And what if it's shasus exactly 1/6? So then the Gemara says, kana, the kinyan works, but umachzir ona, you have to return the extra amount of money that you shouldn't have charged. Good. Let's analyze all pieces of these. Amar Rava. Rava was a Talmud of Rav Nachman, and Rav Nachman was the author of this line. Rava must have sat in shiur, so Rava knew what was going on. Hade amran pachos mishasus nikne mekach. When we say that if the margin of error is less than 1/6, that these two brothers, they're able to make a proper purchase, things are going to move forward. That's only true without a shliach. However, aval shavya shliach, but if there is a shliach, Omar, I could argue that the shliach made an error. I sent you to go do something good, not to do something bad. If you and me as brothers make a decision that we're a little bit off from the market value, we can decide that within a 1/6 margin of error. But if you're my shliach, you're not allowed to do that. That's comment number 1 of Rabbah. Here's comment number 2, 8-9 lines down. We'll be going to the second to last line on the page. That if the margin of error between two brothers is greater than 1/6, that's only true where they didn't say nifligan b'shuma de bedina, where we're going to rely on the measurement of the assessment, I should say, of Bezdin. Aval amar niflog b'shuma de bedina. But if the brothers are relying on Bezdin to do the pricing, so then machran kayam, even if it's greater than 1/6, then we're going to rely on Bezdin. Ditnan, as we saw on the bottom of the previous page, shum hadayonim shepichsu shesus hosir shesus michran batal, that if the dayanim make an assessment and their margin of error is significant, then machran batal. But Rashba Gomer machran kaim, and Rava / Rav Nachman must hold like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, because they just said that if we do rely on Bezdin, then machran kayam, which is exactly what Rashbag holds. And what about the third category? What if me and you are brothers and we make a sale to one another and it's an exact 1/6 margin of error, not more, not less, exactly that much? We had said that the kinyan works, but you have to return the extras. Says the Gemara, that's only true with movable objects. It's not true with karka. And says the Gemara, There is no ona for karkos. That is a sugya for another time, which we did speak a little bit about in the previous Masechta. But that's what the Gemara says over here, that we're only talking about me and you making sales on a car and on movable objects, but not on karka.
In all of these cases, are we assuming that the person doesn't know, meaning if they were aware of the overcharge or undercharge and they accept the deal, then it stands and we can't go back?
Only if Bezdin does that. But if you and I are brothers and we're splitting whatever family,
so if the brothers both know and are aware of it,
right? It's usher. It's no.
Aware of the overcharge or undercharge and they accept the deal,
right? There are scenarios in another area of halacha, which is like by halva, you can totally. That's a different world. Like sometimes we have these cases where, let's say I buy something for you and you Venmo me back and you're off by like 8 cents, so it's understood. Everyone's been mechila mamish, like, okay, there's mechila there. But here you're just pashut violating an isser. So there's margins of error. The only time we have a latitude is when Bezdin is the one who does the shum. They do the hashama. They say that, it's really 1/5, which is 20%, which is more than 1/6. So then that's mikoach Bezdin yafet. But otherwise, I'm under the assumption that it's still usher. Not 100% sure, but it seems that way from the Gemara. Okay, it says the Gemara, even with ground, we're a third of the way down on Membeis and Midbeis, even in regards to karka, lo amran ela de palag bi'ilavaya. That's only true if we split things up based on cost. About palag b'mishchasa, if it's based on measurements, the rules are different. So there's a difference between me giving away karka and saying the karka is $1 million and I'm giving you 100,000 of the $1 million versus saying you get 4 acres, which it does have a dollar equivalent, but we're not divvying up based on dollar value. You may value the cornfield instead of the mountaintop. So there, if you do it that way, then the rules are going to be different. Kid Rabba. What does Rabba say? To Amar Rabba, kol davar shebemida v'shebemishkal v'shebeminyan. Whenever you're measuring something, not with a dollar amount, but with a measurement or with a weight or with a number, then afilu pachos michadei ona nami choser. We're even more makbid, even if there's less than the 1/6 margin has to be given back. And the Gemara then asks on this as follows. Wait 1 second. Let's say that I am not the sharpest tack on the board and I give a torch to a cheresh, a shota, or a katan. Not a good start to a story. And then what happens? He goes and burns down someone's house. So I'm the shliach. I gave it to a cheresh, shota, or katan. I'm the mishalech. Thank you. I'm the mishalech. I'm the sender. And I give it to a katan, and he's like, "Oh, this house looks flammable," and he goes to the neighbor's house, burns it to the ground. Pater midine adam. I, as the mishalech, I'm pater. I don't have to pay anything. But v'chai b'dinei shamayim. Kodesh Baruch Hu is gonna take care of me. That's not right. He's gonna even out the finances. However, shileach biyad pikeach. But what if I gave it to one of you who's a pikeach? Then pikeach chayav. So I'm the mishalech. You're the shaliach, but you're a smart guy. You're not a cheresh, shota, or a katan. And you burn down the neighbor's house. So the Gemara says, I'm the mishalech, I'm completely pater. You're the person who's achrei. Says the Gemara, ve'amai, neima shlucho shel adam kamoso. So this question of the Gemara is going back on what we said earlier. How does shlichus actually work? When we say shlucho shel adam kamoso, is it a full-blown shlucho shel adam kamoso that I am you and I'm just totally an extension of you and I'm doing whatever you say? Well, if that's true, then why is it that if you're a pikeach, that if you burn down the house, that you're guilty? I'm the mishalech. Does that also mean that when I'm your moa, you don't really get credit? How far does shlichus go? So the Gemara says, no, the case of burning something down is different. Shiny hasam, to ein shliach lidvar avera. Oh, so now there's a distinction. By bris milah, by whatever, by shofar, by anything else. Shluchos l'adam kamoso, because that's a mitzvah. But ein shliach lidvar avera. After all, de'amrina divrei harav, divrei talmud, divrei mishomen. You're the shliach. So you go out and you burn the house down. You have to keep Shulchan Aruch. Even if I told you to go burn the house down, ein shliach l'dvar avera. Why? Because you know you can't burn somebody else's house down. So ein shliach l'dvar avera. But there is a shliach for mitzvah. So that's a line in the sand. The shlichus does work. It's a full shlichus when it's for a mitzvah. But if I send you out to go burn someone else, let's say I hire you as a serial killer, right? Well, it's a little severe, but let's say I hire you to kill somebody. So says the Gemara that you're the one who's liable, not me. Why? It's because you have to keep halacha. I'm not a good guy, but you have to keep halacha. The fact that you killed him is your fault, not my fault.
But is it like the person who drives away with the stolen goods but didn't rob the bank? He's also in trouble
Legally.
Mm-hmm. Isn't
That
that
we have here, and we have to keep the case similar, which is we have a mishaleach and we have a shleach. Who's sending who? So let's say I'm orchestrating the heist from my house in Chicago,
right?
and you're the driver and he's the gunman. But I sat at home. You're the ones who are all halachically liable, not me. Now, in the American legal system, everybody's guilty, and they should be. And Hashem's still not happy with you because you're a bad person.
This is not
But-
a fair shot cotton case because it's not a normal.
No, this was a case of a pikeach.
Right, by the PKR, no, by the PKR.
By the pikeach was held accountable.
I mean, that was conflict.
Correct.
Technically, Mishalech gets off.
That's what I'm saying. Is that when if I'm the one orchestrating the heist from home,
That doesn't
that's
seem
only the
fair.
case of pikeach. It's chershot v'katan. But here I'm totally exempt. Right, and I did not do it. I mean, I did something wrong, but halacha doesn't give me the slap on the wrist. I just can't imagine there isn't a punishment in Dinei Shamayim. Yeah, that's hard to imagine because you're not a good person. It says the Gemara,
It's really only Machsham, bro.
which we're going to see again right now, actually at the bottom of the page. It's going to come up again. And Beis Shammai holds that there is such a thing as a machshava ra that matters. We just don't paskin like him. So it says the Gemara, v'hadetnan, should be hadetnan, shliach shelo asa shlichuso shliach ma'al, asa shlichuso bal habayis ma'al. So here we have a stira, because we just said divrei Rav, divrei Talmud, divrei Mishomim. We just said that who's liable? The guy who burned the house down, the pikech who burned the house down, because you should have listened to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. But by Meila, ki ashla shlichusa the balabayis mihama amai nema ein shliach l'dvar avera. If you're trying to tell me that the principle of ein shliach l'dvar avera is a true thing, which you should, because it sounds like it should be a true thing, so then that's wonderful. But then why doesn't it apply by Meila? By Meila, we say that the balabayis is the one who's guilty. So says the Gemara, shiny Meila. The general rule is ein shliach l'dvar avera. But Meila is an exception to the rule because the Yalfa Chet Mitruma. We have a Gzera Shava that makes it that the Balabais is going to be Chayev. Matruma Mashve Shliach Af Meila Mashve Shliach. Just like by Truma, we have a real full Shliach, so too by Meila. But in general, you're right. In general, you're right that we have a principle of Ein Shliach L'Dvar Avera. It's just the Meila is an exception. Says the Gemara, V'nei Laf Mina. Perhaps we should say that Yesh Shliach L'Dvar Avera in general. We should learn that from here. So says the Gemara, no, you can't do that. You might have thought for a second you could from Meila, but Mishum, Davi Meila Shlichus Yad, Shnei Ksuven Abayin Kechad. We haven't spoken about Shlichus Yad yet, but we have Shlich. Maybe we should learn from Meila that Yesh Shliach L'Dvar Avera. We can't because Meila and Shlichus Yad are Shnei Ksuven Abayin Kechad, Chol Shnei Ksuven Abayin Kechad Ein Malamdin. And now we're just going to go through the two Mari Makomos of where we see of Yesh Shliach L'Dvar Avera. It says the Gemara Meila Hade Amran. There were 10 lines from the bottom. By Meila Hade Amran, we see that Yesh Shliach L'Dvar Avera from the Gzera Shav of Chet Chet, and perhaps we should extend to others. Says the Gemara, wait, we also have another Marimakum of Shlichus Yad of taking someone else's property. What's that case to Tanya? The pasuk says, "Al kol dvar pesha." Beis Shammai omrim l'chai bala machshava kemaisa. They hold that even machshava is going to be aser, and it's going to be. All of this, as we'll soon see, is Yesh Shliach L'Dvar Avera. Beis Hillel omrim eino chai b'ad sheyishlach bo yad, until you actually touch something. Shenemar im lo shalach bo yad. Omri Beis Shammai leBeis Hillel v'halo nemar al kol dvar pesha. I'll call dvar pesha everything, even your machshava, which is a dvar pesha. Amr lam Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. You got to be able to read the Chumash. V'halo, the pasuk says nemar im lo shalach yado b'mleches re'ehu. You have to actually touch the thing to violate the iser. So it says the Gemara, Amr Beis Shammai leBeis Hillel im kein al kol dvar pesha lamali. So Beis Shammai says to Beis Hillel, why is it that I need the pasuk of a kol dvar pesha? Sheyachol Ainly Elahu. I might have thought that it's only about that person. Amar le'abdo u'lishlucho minayin. But if I were to tell to my eved or to my shliach that he can't steal either, Talmud lomar al kol dvar pesha. What do we see from there? That there too we have a case of yesh shliach l'dvar avera. Oh, so therefore we see shliach l'dvar avera in two cases, me'ila and shlichus yad, and therefore the shnei ksuven abayin kechad, and therefore ein malamdin, and therefore in general we hold ein shliach l'dvar avera. These two cases are the exception, the cases of me'ila and shlichus yad. We'll stop right here. I have no idea when we're going to learn the next spot, but we'll figure it out. Wishing you all a Gemar Chasima Tova.